It's a real honor to be a part of this, and I've always enjoyed coming here to the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. It's a kind of a mecca and a favorite place to come, and it's something that needs to be on everybody's bucket list in the state of Texas that's a sports fan anyway. As I say, Friday's winners, I wrote about the 12 winningest high school football teams in Texas. That was through the 2013 season, from the time they first started playing all the way back as far as 2004 for Plano High School, all the way forward through 2013. While I was working on this book, and all I would ask, or I'd tell people that I was writing about the winningest teams, and that always was a reason to start a conversation. And everybody had their own idea of who belonged in the book. And so I thought I'd give you all a chance. If you haven't looked at the list of who's in this book, do you have any thoughts on who you think belongs?
I know who's in the book. Chuck Mosher and the Abilene High Eagles.
Well, they are. They are, but actually they weren't then. I mean, they were because they played Amarillo High in the state quarterfinals in 1957 and beat them in Amarillo.
Sorry about that.
And then the next week they tied with Highland Park 20-20 in penetrations, and that stopped their 49-game win streak. But they weren't one of the 12 teams making the book.
They weren't?
No. No. Any other thoughts? There's always one other.
Oh, that's the Permian.
There you go, yeah.
Mighty Mojo.
Mighty Mojo. And the Mighty Mojo are, at the time of the book, were more than 200 wins behind the top 7 schools in my book. Anybody making my book had to have won 666 games through 2013. And Permian at that point had like 492 wins. So Permian didn't make the book either, you know. And then there's a whole list more of other schools that everybody has in mind. So if I alphabetically in order, the schools that I included in there was my alma mater, Amarillo High, which was my motivation for writing the book, Brownwood, Cameron Yoe, who wasn't originally going to be in the book, but when I started writing it and doing my research, it took me 30 months to put this together. And during that time frame, Cameron Yoe won 30 of 31 games and 2 state championships, and they came kicking and screaming into my book. So I had to include them, and all, which I did, and it was a great addition to the book. So Cameron Yoe, and then Corsicana, Cuero, Highland Park, Hondo, Longview, Mart, Plano, Temple, and John Tyler. That was the group at the end of 2013. Hondo at that point was the last one in the book. In the last 2 seasons since then, or 3 seasons since then, Refugio, Abilene finally, and Lufkin have all moved ahead of Hondo, and they're now number 12, 13, and 14 in the book. And Sweetwater, who had a great season this past season, moved up and have tied with Hondo for 15th place. Now, I forget the total number of wins that they have, but that's where they are. So that's an update on what's going on. The thing I found interesting about the people that I interviewed for my book was that some of the people in there who went on to become some of the greatest players ever, they became All-Americans in college, they became All-Pros in the NFL and all, they all in the book, in the interview, they all confessed to something that they thought they did wrong back playing in high school, where they hurt their team, really let them down or whatever. And it's kind of interesting to find out about that group. And also I made some notes on who was in that group. There was Kettrick Sanford from Corsicana. He was there in the mid-90s, and when he finished playing, he was the third leading all-time rusher in Texas high school football history. And he did a superb job for him. But in his senior year, they played Mount Pleasant in the playoffs, and they didn't make it. And he writes in the interview that he provided me, he writes, "What if I?" and "What if I?" and 3 or 4 different times. He said, "What if I had done this? And what if I had done that?" The outcome would have been different. So he was like taking it on his shoulders that they didn't get past Mount Pleasant in that game. Another one was Brad Gable, who played at Cuero and then came here and was a great player for Baylor afterwards. But there was one of the games that they were in. I don't remember that it's a playoff game, but he was being he had the ball and he was being pursued real heavily by a big rush, and it looked like he was going to be going to be sacked or something. So he threw the ball away. Well, he got flagged for intentional grounding, and they got the penalty on that and all. And when he came over to the sideline, he said his coach chewed him up one side and down the other, and said made him feel so bad. He said, I felt so bad for what I had done to my team at that point. But then later in the game, he came back in and he had a chance, and he threw the winning touchdown and survived the game, and went over there, and he says the coach was hugging him and patting him like nothing had ever happened. But he had felt so bad about that one play that he had made. And then the big one, Doak Walker. He played for Highland Park back in the 40s before he played for SMU. He was 3-time All-American. He's one of 2 Heisman Trophy winners mentioned in my book, the other being Earl Campbell from John Tyler. I had a little personal connection with Doak Walker in that my